begin at 6:45 p.m. sharp due to the descending prayer times. And now it is with great honor to present to you Samahat al-Sayyid Ahmad al-Qazwini after a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا شهيد يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. Enlighten your hearts and your majalis with a loud salawat for Muhammad and al Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's estimated that there are anywhere from 4 to 7 million Muslims living in America. And most of these Muslims are either immigrants or the children of immigrants, second, third, fourth generation, whose parents, they left their countries and they immigrated to the United States seeking a better life, whether it's because they were looking for a better standard of living, better education or health, or because they had to flee their original country, their home country, because of persecution and violence, and they came to the U.S. to start a new life, and they sought refuge here. And like I said, now we have about 4 to 7 million Muslims in America living. And for a long time, most of the Muslims in the U.S., for a very long time, they felt very welcomed in this country. And they assimilated very well into the American society, and they lived relatively comfortable lives. The U.S. became their second home. And then all of a sudden, we had 9/11. And everything changed. Muslims began panicking. Many Muslims no longer saw the U.S. as their home. They weren't so comfortable being here anymore. They didn't see themselves welcomed. And that's because many Muslims were victimized with the prejudice that they had to face, with the discrimination that they face and the profiling, whether in the airports, if you're wearing hijab, if you have a beard, or if you have a Muslim name, or sometimes even in the private sector, the discrimination against Muslims, the hate crimes that Muslims saw, and they were likewise vilified and seen as terrorists. Many Americans after 9/11 began seeing Muslims as terrorists. They're all sleeper cells waiting to kill a non-Muslim. So many Muslims, they began to panic and they thought of leaving this country. They said, we can no longer continue living in this country because we don't feel welcomed. And some went to the extent of saying that this is the end of Islam in America. This is the end of Muslims in America. We will no longer be able to live happily, freely in this country. Now, thankfully, alhamdulillah, that didn't happen. It wasn't the end of Islam in America. And it's partly due to the good work and efforts of many believers who had to, day after day, go out and portray Islam in such a good way and give Islam a good image. They had to dispel those misconceptions against Islam and clear the ignorance. Because a lot of the people who have these negative sentiments here against Islam, they're ignorant. There's propaganda and there's ignorance. So they had to dispel this propaganda, the misconceptions, and clear the ignorance. And slowly, once again, matters for Muslims in the U.S., they became a lot better. After years, after 9/11, during the Obama years, once again they felt more welcomed in this country. And they felt that this is their home once again. But all of a sudden, after the Obama years, when Trump came to power and he became the president, all of a sudden we saw once again the rise in Islamophobia. Once again we saw what we saw after 9/11. The post 9/11 days, they returned. Muslims now are afraid, to go to certain places because they're afraid of discrimination. They're afraid of hate crimes. They don't feel welcomed in this country anymore because, the president and the top officials in this country, they keep on saying negative things against Islam. And once again, we're back at square one where we used to be post 9/11. Some Muslims, they got fed up. They were really tired. And they began asking, why is this happening, this cycle? We go to rock bottom, and Muslims in America are as bad as they can be. Their condition, their situation is so bad, it's so miserable. And we work so hard only to reach square one after a few years. How long is this cycle going to last? What did we do wrong? What should we change? Now, there's many things, brothers and sisters, that we can work on in this country if we want to advance Islam. And I will mention some of them tonight, tomorrow, and the last night, the night of Ashura. Things that we can do in order to advance our interests as a Muslim community living in America. So that we don't once again go back to square one. All of a sudden, if a new fearmonger like Trump comes and takes us all the way back to square one. What do? What are things that we have to do in order to advance the interests of Islam in America? Tonight, I want to speak about this point. One of the most important factors, brothers and sisters, is that we have to get more politically engaged in the U.S., in the political process. You see, many elections come and go, and we Muslims, we're clueless. We don't even know who's running. We don't participate in the voting. Yes, maybe the presidential vote we do. But what about the lower level elections? The House, when there's a House seat, when there's, the Senate elections, the state elections, the state Senate elections, the governor. Most Muslims, they don't care about that. They don't even know who's running, and they don't vote. Voter turnout amongst Muslims is very, very low in these lower level elections that happen in the U.S. A few months ago, there was a Muslim man that ran for state Senate in California, and he was Muslim. And he told one of my relatives in California, he told him that most of the people that voted for me were not even Muslim, were non-Muslim white people. And the Muslims didn't even know I was running for state Senate, because Muslims are living in a different world. And we, brothers and sisters, we have on and on paid a heavy price for that, for our naiveness, for our passiveness, for our negligence. When we don't care about the political process, we pay a very hefty price. You see, over and over again, politicians don't care about Muslim interests. Our interests as Muslims in America are completely ignored because we're not engaged. You see draconian policies like the Muslim ban. That's only possible because we're not engaged. 5 years ago, if you'd have asked me, is it possible that such a ban could happen here in the U.S., I would have said impossible. Maybe in other countries, but not here. Maybe a Muslim ban is even possible in Saudi Arabia. But not here in the U.S., because in the U.S., We have freedom of religion, and there's no discrimination based on religion, or that's what we thought. Now, of course, they like to justify the Muslim ban and sugarcoat it. It's not a Muslim ban, but we know it's a Muslim ban. How did that become possible? Because we took advantage of being lazy couch potatoes and thinking that, you know what, life is going to go on, we can live perfectly in this country without engaging in the political process, and we were wrong. And we say day after day, there's more and more politicians that are more emboldened against Islam. They come out without any shame, without any, insolence, with complete insolence. They come out and they say all these negative things about Islam. Every day they're emboldened more and more. Why? One reason is because of our negligence, because of our passiveness, because we don't do anything to try to counter that. And it's only going to get worse and worse, brothers and sisters, unless we get engaged, politically engaged in the process. Just a month ago, exactly a month ago, I read in the news that two couple in Switzerland, they go to take the citizenship test because they passed all the tests and they lived in Switzerland for the necessary time that they need to live in order to get the citizenship. So they went to collect their citizenship. They asked them a few questions. They passed the test. In the end, they were denied the right to citizenship. You know why? Because the couple refused to shake hands with the opposite gender. Because the two people who were questioning them, male, female, they extended their hands to shake with those two couple, and they refused on religious grounds. They said, you won't shake hands with us? We will not give you citizenship. Now, what was their excuse? That this isn't being fair with genders. This is, gender bias. And on the grounds of gender bias, they were denied the right to citizenship. How ironic is it? I even saw in the article, one of the guys in the committee, in the citizenship committee, he was saying this is bigotry. When you don't want to shake hands with an opposite gender, this is bigotry. Why don't you care for the views and the opinions and the emotions of that, lady that you don't want to shake hands with her? So he considered it bigotry to not shake hands based on religious grounds. SubhanAllah, it's exactly the opposite. When you object to someone who doesn't want to shake hands for religious purposes, not because he's prejudiced or biased, for religious purposes, when you reject that person, all right, for that reason, this is bigotry itself. This is the textbook definition of bigotry. And they were denied citizenship. Now, some of us, we may think this happens in Switzerland. It happens in France. We know there's a ban on hijab in government. Employees, they can't wear hijabs in public schools. But we tell ourselves in the U.S. it will never happen. Don't we tell ourselves this? In the U.S., can you imagine if one day, someone is denied citizenship because they don't want to shake hands, because it's the opposite gender? But wallahi, brothers and sisters, if we don't take action, we don't get engaged, one day the U.S. will reach that state. Where you hear in the news one day that there is a muhajjab, a girl, woman, who goes and seeks a job, and she's not given that job because of her hijab, and nothing happens. Yes, we think that we can rely on the Constitution, and it gives us religion, freedom of religion, and doesn't allow you to discriminate based on religion. But we learned after the Muslim ban that it was all a mirage, it was all an illusion. If you want your rights, you have to go and collect it. They won't give you your rights on a gold platter. So unless we move, brothers and sisters, wallahi, one day, in 10 years, 20 years, who knows? Now you may laugh at the idea in the same way that I used to laugh 5 years ago at the idea of a Muslim ban. I used to say, America, impossible. They'll never, not allow certain people to come because of their religion. This will never happen. Maybe in 100 years. Only a few years later, how everything's unfolding now in the political world, in the U.S., in 5, 10, 20 years, God knows what will happen. Maybe some man who goes to board a flight, because he has a beard, he won't be allowed to board the flight. Maybe a Muslim girl won't be allowed to board a flight because of her hijab. Because they'll consider this as bigotry. They know how to sugarcoat words and twist words. They know how to do that. Just like they consider hijab in France as oppression towards women. So unless we move, brothers and sisters, unless we get politically engaged, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. We can't just do dua. Some people, they just do dua. Ya Allah, make our conditions and our matters and our affairs better and better. Dua is not enough. Dua is not enough. The Holy Quran says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. If you want Allah to make a change in your affairs, then you have to start individually. You have to make a move. You can't be passive, be a couch potato and just raise your hand and say, Ya Allah, make us the victors. Oh Allah, make us successful. While we don't do anything. That's not how this life works. Doesn't the hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ say, من أصبح لا يهتم بأمور المسلمين فليس بمسلم? He says, whoever doesn't care about the affairs of Muslims, he is not a Muslim. When I don't care what happens to Muslims here or abroad, then I am not a true Muslim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed me in a position where I can make a difference, brothers and sisters. If I was born in the streets of Iraq and China, streets of India, maybe I couldn't have made a difference. I had no opportunities. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought me to this country, alhamdulillah, we all go to school, we're all educated. We have many opportunities ahead of us. We have been given by Allah the opportunity to make a change. If we work hard and we strive, we can reach the top. There's nothing impossible here in this country. And the greatest testimony is, look at Obama. Look at who he comes from. His father is a man from Kenya that came here and studied a few years and then left. Did he ever in his wildest dreams think one day that my son will be the president of the United States? 30, 40 years ago, even if you would have told him, he would have laughed at that idea. But it's possible because the opportunity is there and he worked very hard. He went through the ladder. He got a good education and then he went through the political system up until he reached the presidency. If he can do it, why can't I do it, brothers and sisters? Why? We can do it. Allah has given us has given us the opportunity, but with it comes responsibility. Allah placed me here. I have so many opportunities ahead of me. I have to make sure that I am up to the responsibility. So if we want our matters to get better, Muslim affairs, whether in America or abroad in the Middle East, because you know this country is the country that dictates the laws of all the world. It's not just the government of this country, it's the government of the entire world. They make policies in the Pentagon and then people halfway, on the other side of the world are either dead because of that or they're alive because of it. So they rule the entire world. And Allah has placed me in this position where I can potentially be a decision maker. Now many Muslims, when you tell them this, why don't you engage in the political process? They have two excuses for that. There's two reasons why they don't engage in the political process. And I want to go over them and refute each one. Number one, the first reason why some Muslims don't get involved, even though they have the potential, they're educated, they're very fluent, they're smart, they're bold, they have wealth even, but they don't get engaged. The first reason many Muslims don't get engaged is because they don't have a sense of belonging to this country. They don't feel like they're American. Me or my parents or my grandparents came from Iraq, came from Lebanon, from Syria, from Saudi Arabia. I consider myself, even after 4 generations, I'm still Lebanese. I'm still Iraqi, I'm still Afghan, I'm still Pakistani or wherever my parents or grandparents came from. We don't have that sense of belonging, love to this country, that we want to do service to this country. And we consider this country just as an ATM, just as a cow that we milk it, we make the best money here. And then our love and devotion is for our country in the Middle East. And that's why you see many people, he works for 30 years so that he can save money to go build a mansion in the Middle East in his village. That's his dream. Just considering this country as what? As an ATM machine, as a cow to milk. I don't want to do service to this country. But then all I want to do is send all my contributions and all my charities to the Middle East because I come from that country. This is the mentality that some of us have, brothers and sisters. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, ليس بلد أحق بك من بلد خير البلاد ما حملك. He says there's no such thing that I belong to this country or that country. He says the true country that you belong to is the one that carries you, that nurtures you, that cares for you, that gives you freedom and dignity and respect. Many of us, brothers and sisters, we abandon our countries. We can't live there. We come to this country. Allah gives us wealth in this country. He gives us the best health care in this country. We take the best passport in the world, the citizenship of this country. We travel with it. We have the best schools here. We have the best services here in the world. The best jobs, the best everything. You have the best, 401k, everything. We benefit and benefit and benefit from this country. And then we consider that country in the Middle East that did nothing for me. That's where I come from. That's where my love and dedication is. Why? خَيْرُ الْبِلَادِ, the Imam says, مَا حَمَلَكَ. The true country that you should love and be devoted to is the one that gives you dignity and respect. Some Muslim countries live there for 100 years, they won't give you citizenship. Overnight they'll deport you. And it's a so-called Muslim country. Go here in the US, go to the hospital. You don't have health care? They have absolutely no right to deny you, brothers and sisters, health care. They'll settle the bills after. First, they'll give you the health care. It's against the law to deny you health care if you go to the hospital, the emergency room, and they ask you, what's your plan? And you don't have it, and they don't give you the service that you need, the health care that you need, just because you don't have health care. It's against the law here in this country. And then go to the Muslim countries and see how they treat Muslims there, and their so-called Muslim countries. Brothers and sisters, this is a personal story. I had a child in one of the Muslim countries. I don't want to mention the name of it because you'll be shocked. I had a child in one of the Muslim countries. After my wife delivered the baby, I wanted to go and see the baby because you're not allowed to enter the room during the labor and the delivery. I wanted to enter and see my child. You know what they told me? They told me, sir, if you don't go and pay the bill, you're not going to see your child. First, go and make sure the balance you pay, so far it's, let's say, $1,000. Go and pay it first, and then you'll see your child. When you want to go and pay, it's a 1-2 hour long process until you want to pay the bill. And then a few days after, God decided to take my child. He passed away in the hospital. So they called me. I was in my house. Come and collect your baby. I went to see my baby who's dead. They said, first go and make sure that you pay for all the balance. Only then you'll see your dead baby. And that's a 2-3 hour process. And this is a Muslim country. I don't want to mention the name of it. That some of us love so much. But here in America, we consider this country, just come, milk it, and go back to your country. خَيْرُ الْبِلَادِ مَا حَمَلَكَ, brothers and sisters. The true country that you should have pride about and have a sense of belonging to is the country that gives you dignity, that gives you respect and honor, and treats you like a human being. Remember when we had the Muslim ban last year? How many non-Muslims came to defend Muslims, to support Muslims, when many of us were sleeping and dozing and being couch potatoes? If I truly have a sense of belonging to a country, it should be to this country. Now, yes. Now, at the same time, there were certain Muslim countries who were cheering for the Muslim ban, by the way. Certain Muslim governments were cheering for the Muslim ban when there was non-Muslims here defending and supporting Muslims. And you saw the riots and the protests. Now, yes, you may say, I'm against the foreign policy of this government, of this country. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to say. That's why you should get engaged, so you can try to make a difference. Be a lawmaker, so you can change the course of the foreign policy of this country. That's exactly what we're trying to say. It's a good country, there's many positives. But the foreign policy, yes, maybe there's oppression and injustice. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's why we should get involved and try to change that. And it's possible to change that. It's possible, it's not impossible. Yes, if I was in Saudi Arabia, it's impossible. Yes, if I was probably in China, it's impossible, but here it's possible. Like I mentioned, if Obama made it to the presidency and his father is from Kenya, why can't I? Why? Is it impossible? It's not impossible. We have examples and we have people that did it before us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. A second salawat for Muhammad and al-Muhammad. So unless we take matters into our hands, brothers and sisters, things will only get worse and worse and worse. So that's the first excuse that many people have. Or they may not say it, but it's the reality. That their true belonging is not to this country, it's to the country that they came from or their parents or grandparents came from. My true belonging and my pride should be about the country that gives me dignity. the country that gives me freedom. You know, this majlis that we're holding right now here, it's not possible to hold it in some Muslim countries. You know, some Muslim countries, they invite me to speak, but then they tell me that you're banned. You're not allowed to come and speak here. It's a Muslim country. I don't want to mention the country, but there's one country where I was invited to speak, but they said, you're banned, and this speaker is banned, and this speaker is banned, and this speaker is banned. And it's a Muslim country, while here, a non-Muslim country, I can say whatever I want, and I can talk about any topic I want. Isn't this a blessing? Isn't this a ni'mah, brothers and sisters? So this is excuse number one that some Muslims have. The first reason why we're not engaged, because we don't feel like we're a part of this society, a part of this country. Why should we get engaged? The second reason why some Muslims don't get engaged in the political process in this country is for religious reasons. There's a lot of those Muslims, holier than thou Muslims, who tell you it is haram for you to get engaged in the political process of this country. It's Islamically unacceptable. Why? They tell you because if by doing so you're supporting an oppressive government, an unjust government, and thus it's haram for you to go and vote, to run for office, to run for Senate or for governor or city council or president or whatever, because they tell you this is a kafir country. It's a non-Muslim country. It's a Zionist country. It's the Shaitan al-Akbar, the big shaitan, the big devil. And I'm not allowed to vote, to be engaged in the political process of this great Satan. There's many Muslims that use this religious card. And unfortunately, not only on themselves, but they try to persuade others not to vote and not to get engaged in the political process, on the pretext that it's haram. 3 points about this, brothers and sisters. Listen carefully. There's a lot of these people, even in our community. 3 points. Number one, I tell those individuals that call the U.S. a kafir Zionist country, the great shaitan, the great devil, and it's haram to get engaged in the political process. I ask them, if this is such a kafir Zionist country, why do you live here to begin with? Isn't this hypocrisy? Go back to your country. Go back to Iraq, Iran, Lebanon. Go and live there. You come here. You take their citizenship, their passport, and you have vacations all over the world with the passport of the great shaitan. You make some good money from the great shaitan. You have peace and security, and you have all the good, you know, the healthcare, the 401k. You benefit from the good shaitan, but when it's about making a difference in the political system, it becomes haram. What type of hypocrisy is here? You don't like this country? Get out of here. No one's forcing you to stay here. So this is number one, sheer hypocrisy. That I live here and I make millions in this country, but then I discourage other people from engaging in the political process on the basis of it's a kafir country. That's number one. Number two, you ask this person who says it's haram and this is a kafir country. I ask this person, do you pay taxes or not? If he says no, then one of two, either he's lying or congratulations, you're going to go to jail soon for tax evasion. So if he can't say no, so obviously he's going to say, yes, I pay tax. I pay thousands of dollars of tax, tens of thousands. If I'm rich, probably millions of dollars in tax. Congratulations, this is the biggest support to the great shaitan. You're giving them cash so they can send to Palestine to kill children. How is this not haram? How is this not supporting an oppressive regime? He pays taxes to the government, but when you want to vote, he says it's haram. No, brother, the damage is already done. You paid the taxes. You empowered the government with your own money. And then when I want to go and vote and try to stop that money from going to oppression, you tell me it's haram? The whole point of voting is to try to mitigate the oppression. We vote and we run for office so that we can stop the money from being used in the oppressive ways. How is that haram? How is that supporting an oppressive government? You're the one that supported the oppressive government when you paid the taxes. Now I'm just trying to lessen the harm of those taxes. I don't want them to be sent to this and that country to be used against innocent children. How do I do that? The only way I do that is if I enter the government, enter politics, or else I can't make a difference. So this is point number two, which shows you that their argument is false. It's absolutely wrong. It's a fallacy. And finally, point number three. If anyone, brothers and sisters in the community, comes and tells you it is haram to vote or to run for office in the U.S., Ask them, excuse me, brother, who are you? Are you a alim? Are you a scholar? What are your credentials? What's your credibility? Did you go to Hawza and Qom or Najaf and study? Who gave you the authority to say this is haram and this is haram and this is halal? Subhanallah, when it comes to religion, everyone's a mujtahid. Why don't we respect the fact that we have scholars and we have to go to scholars and maraja and they tell us what's halal and haram? All those individuals that I see, they say it's haram to vote, it's haram, it's haram, it's haram. They're always ignorant people that have not been to Hawza, that have not studied. They read 3 books all of a sudden and they listen to 7 lectures on YouTube. All of a sudden he's a alim, he's a scholar. He begins to tell people this is halal, this is haram. He's a self-proclaimed scholar all of a sudden. While we have ulama who study for 50 years, brothers and sisters, 10 hours a day in the Hawza. And after 50 years he tells you what's halal and haram. So he's been through hell until he's able to tell you what's halal and haram. He's done so much research. And then I so arrogantly, because I read 3 books, I come and say, you know what, it's haram to get engaged in the political process. Who are you, with all due respect? You're not qualified to give your view. The Holy Quran says, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادِ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. The Quran says, if you don't have knowledge about something, don't speak about it. Don't give your views in religion if you have not been to Hawza and you've studied extensively. Or else Allah Azza wa Jalla will hold me responsible on the Day of Judgment. Our scholars, they study for so long, and only after those years they give the fatwa. Don't rush to halal and haram. And thus, when you go to the true scholars, the ulama, the maraja', you will not find even one marja'. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You will not find one marja', brothers and sisters, that will tell you it is haram for you to vote in the US. It is haram for you to run for office. Bring me one marja' from his office. Don't bring me from Facebook and Twitter someone saying this marja' or that marja' said, this is halal, haram. No, bring me from his official website, official statement with his stamp that says it is haram to vote. It is haram to vote for this candidate or that candidate. There's no such thing. The maraja', none of them have said it's haram. So we shouldn't give our views in religion when our maraja' haven't said it's haram. So for those that tell you it's haram, don't get involved in the political process. Ask them for the source of that fatwa. Where are you bringing this fatwa from? Who told you it's haram? You're not a scholar, so you have to refer me to a true scholar who's been in the Hawza, and he tells you that it's haram. I've been in the Hawza for 13 years now. I never heard one scholar even say this, that it's haram to vote, that it's haram to engage in the politics there. I've never heard it. Where do these views come from? From ignorant people, who've never studied, never went to Hawza. They have no credibility. But then again, sometimes they do have a point. They tell you that when we read the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, we see that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they discouraged us from getting involved into politics. Now they'll go back to the hadith. They tell you we have numerous traditions from Imam Baqir, from Imam Sadiq, from Imam Kadhim, from Imam Rida, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. They're all telling us don't get involved in politics. Don't get involved in the governments of the oppressors, or else Allah Azza wa Jal will resurrect you with the oppressors. Allah Azza wa Jal will take you to hell with the oppressors because you're supporting their oppression. And some of them, they refer to this verse in the Quran where Allah says, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ. Allah says in one verse in the Holy Quran, do not incline towards, do not support, do not go near, support, become a complicit of the zalama. The zalama are the oppressors. If there is someone who is considered as an oppressor, don't go near them. Don't mingle with them. Don't strengthen them and support them. And then they tell you there's a hadith from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. There's a famous hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where one day one of his companions by the name of Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ini, he told him there is someone who works in the government of Bani Umayyah, he wants to see you. So that man came, he told the Imam, I'm a tax collector. It's like you're someone that works for the IRS. He was a tax collector for the government of Bani Umayyah. And he told him that, you know what? I want to repent now because I used to do so much haram and unlawfully take people's money. It was all corruption and evil. And I want to repent to you. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he said this golden rule. He said, if it wasn't for people like you who work for the oppressors would not be able to oppress us Ahlul Bayt. It's you average guys who work for the oppressors that enable the oppressors to be so strong. If you didn't work as the tax collector, the ministers resigned, no one worked for Bani Umayyah, they won't have troops, they won't have a government, no one will support them, they'll be weak. So it's you average people that work for the government of Bani Umayyah who are empowering them. And it's you people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you accountable. Why did you give power to that oppressor? You could have stayed home. Why did you work for him and make sure that his government is running day after day? So some will look at this hadith and tell you, look, working for a government is haram if it's an oppressor. So I can't work here. Because there is oppression in this government, this is haram, I cannot work. Now, how do we refute this verse? This argument that is referring to this verse and the argument that is referring to the hadith. First of all, the verse says, if you support the oppressors, then Allah Azza wa Jal will what? Will punish you with fire. This is what the Quran says. How to reply to this? I already mentioned it. By engaging in the political system, brothers and sisters, by voting and running for office. You're not supporting them. You're supporting them before that, when you were paying taxes. By running for office and voting, you're trying to lessen the damage. That's all you're doing. You're not going to add to the damage. You're trying to lessen. Because once you enter the government, you become a senator, you become a House of Representatives, you become in that chamber, you're able to what? You're able to strike down, vote against any bill that is oppressive, aren't you? Worst case scenario, don't vote. Even if you're not allowed, you don't want that, name. You don't want to be labeled as being against this country and anti-Semitic or whatever. The least thing you can do is don't vote. Refrain from voting. So how are you adding to the oppression? So by engaging in the political system, we're not supporting oppression. We're doing it before that when we're paying taxes. Now we're just trying to mitigate the oppression. So this is point number 2. This is the first verse and how we refute it. And then the hadith of Imam al-Sadiq, where he told that man, if it wasn't for average people like you, the tax collector, the government wouldn't have been empowered. How do we reply to this? You see how sometimes we like to pick and choose the hadith that we like. You have to look at all the hadith. Yes, this hadith does exist. But we have tons of other ahadith that tell us it is haram to engage in an oppressive government unless. We don't read the unless. We just want to read the first part. It is haram to engage in an oppressive government. Read the exception. There's an exception. There's an unless. Why don't we read it? There's many ahadith from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt that say there is an exception. What's that exception? The Imams in many hadiths, they say it is haram to engage in an oppressive government unless you can use your position and your power to help the believers and the Shia of your time or the Muslims of your time. If you can use your power to help the believers, then it becomes okay. It becomes halal for you to take that position. I'll read you a few hadiths so that we can understand what I'm talking about. The first hadith, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He's narrating saying this. Listen carefully. من تولى أمرا من أمور الناس فعدل وفتح بابه ورفع ستره ونظر في أمور الناس. He says, the sixth Imam says, whoever has been given a position of power and he uses that position to try to stop injustice, to try to establish justice and to help people in the society and in the community, the Imam says, كان حقا على الله أن يؤمن روعته يوم القيامة ويدخله الجنة. He says that Allah Azza wa Jal on the day of judgment will protect that person. He will protect him, safeguard him, and He will allow him to enter paradise, Jannah. Because he used his power and his position to try to establish justice, stop oppression, and help the believers, help the Shia of his time. And there's other ahadiths from the Imams where they say the kafara of working for the oppressor is to help the good people in the community. Working for an oppressor is not good, but you can negate the evilness of that. You can negate it and offset the evil by using your position to help people in the society, because you have power now. You have power and you can use your power to help people. So these are the ahadith of the imams that mentioned. There's at least 5 or 6 of these ahadith that I mentioned. There's an exception. If you can use your position to help Muslims, to help the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, then it is a very good act, even if it's in the government of an oppressor. Of course, as long as you don't directly engage in the oppression, you're not doing the oppression directly. And in addition to that, brothers and sisters, we have many examples of individuals that the imams gave them permission to enter the government of the oppressors. I'll mention some of them. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll mention 5 examples. The imams gave authority to some of their companions to enter the government of the oppressors in order to help the Shia and the believers. Now, before I mention these examples, we have a very vivid and beautiful and clear example in the Quran, and that is what? The example of Prophet Yusuf. Prophet Yusuf, Allah tells us that towards the end of his life, he asked the Prime Minister, Aziz Misr, the Prime Minister of Egypt, who was a kafir, a non-Muslim, who was a kafir government, he asked him to make him the treasurer of the kingdom. اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم, the Quran says. He asked him to make him a minister of, the treasury. And he made him the minister of treasury. So if it's haram to be in a kafir government, how did Yusuf do it? And he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's number 1. And then we come to the imams of Ahlul Bayt. The first example is Salman al-Farisi. I spoke about him a few nights ago. He was one of the most loyal companions of the Holy Prophet and of Imam Ali alayhi salam. He always stayed loyal to Imam Ali. He never went with the enemies of Imam Ali. And during the kingdom of the second Khalifa, he got the opportunity to become the governor of Madain. Madain is currently, today, it's south of Baghdad in Iraq. There's a city called Madain, and Salman al-Farisi, he's buried there. He has a shrine. So he was summoned by the Khalifa and he was given the opportunity to become the governor of Madain. This is under a just government? Of course not. This is the second Khalifa. So he goes to Imam Ali alayhi salam and he asks for permission. Imam Ali gives him the permission. He tells him, as long as you can use your power to help the people in your community, you can do that. So this is the first example. Salman al-Farisi, Imam Ali gave him permission to go and enter politics, and he did. He was the governor of Madain. Example number 2, Ali ibn Yaqtin. During the time of the 7th Imam, Imam al-Kazim, one of his companions was one by the name of Ali ibn Yaqtin. Ali ibn Yaqtin, he was summoned by whom? Harun al-Abbasi. How many times did I speak about him during my lectures? Harun al-Abbasi was a dictator. He eventually ended up killing our 7th Imam. So you see what type of an oppressor he was. He used to kill so many of the Shia. Think of like Saudi Arabia. Think of the Wahhabis. Now, this was who Harun al-Abbasi was. Ali ibn Yaqtin, one of the closest companions of our 7th Imam, he tells the Imam one day that I have been summoned and Harun wants me to be his minister. And if you were a minister of Harun, because the Islamic kingdom back then was huge, it was an empire, that means you had a lot of power. The Imam told him, yes, accept, but make sure that you use your power to help the Shia. And Ali ibn Yaqtin, what he would do, he would conceal the fact that he was Shia. You know taqiyya? You've heard of taqiyya? It's when you conceal your identity or you conceal your faith. This is what he did. Because Harun never knew he was Shia. And many times he would have doubt, but the Imam would help him in those times of doubt, and he would save him from the wrath of Harun. So even if it means you conceal your faith, the Imam told him. You don't have to tell him I'm Shia. Even when you pray like this, the Imam would tell him. The Imam even sent a letter once to Ali ibn Yaqtin. He told him, starting from tomorrow, I want you to do wudu the Sunni way. How do they do the wudu? We, instead of washing our feet, we wipe our feet, right? The other schools of thought, they don't wipe their feet, they wash their feet. So Ali ibn Yaqtin, he says, you know what, I'm the follower of the school of thought of Imam Sadiq. Why is the seventh Imam telling me to wash the feet? But then he says, Mawlaya a'lam. He says, Imam al-Qadhi must have some wisdom behind this. So he starts doing wudu by washing his feet. You know, not the Shi'i way. So what happens, that same time, one of the other ministers of Harun, he had realized, he had found out that Ali ibn Yaqtin is a Shia. And if you were a Shia back then, that means you get your head chopped off. Just like some places what ISIS does and what the Wahhabis do. So he went to Harun and he told Harun that your minister Ali ibn Yaqtin is a Shia and he talks to the seventh Imam, Imam al-Qadhi. Harun said, impossible, no way. They told him, yes, we have so many clues, we have so many, so much evidence to back that up. So he decided to test Ali ibn Yaqtin. And one of his advisors told him the best way, spy on him when he's doing wudu. Spy on him when he's doing wudu. And if he does wudu the Shi'i way, that means he's a Shia, chop his head off. If he does it the Sunni way, that means it was all lies against him. That means there's people who envied him, and that's why they made up false rumors. So Harun one day, he went and he spied while Ali ibn Yaqtin had no clue that Harun is looking at him, and he saw Harun, he's washing his feet. So he said, no, this guy can't be a Shia because the Shia wipe their feet. So he went to Ali ibn Yaqtin and he told him what's going on. He told him that so many people are accusing you of being Shia, but I know that it's false. I know you're not a Shia and I'm going to keep you. And he made him even closer to him. The next day, Imam al-Qadhi, he sends him a letter and he tells him, from now on, start wiping your feet because the danger is gone. So anyway, one day Ali ibn Yaqtin, he sends a letter to the seventh Imam. He tells him, my master, I want to resign from my post because there's too much oppression in the government of Harun. See, I'm mentioning these stories so we can relate now. So the Imam, he writes back, he tells him, oh Ali ibn Yaqtin, I prohibit you from resigning. Some people say it's haram. The Imam tells him, I prohibit you from resigning from your post because you're using your power and your position to help so much Shia. If you go, who's going to help the Shia? Every year he used to send 300 Shia to Hajj. He used to pay for it, sponsor it. He used to give them land. He used to lessen their taxes. He used to make sure that no one bothers a Shia, no one oppresses a Shia of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. So if he is in that position and he's using his power to help the believers, why would it be haram? This is what the third example. We said number 1, Yusuf. Number 2, Salman. Number 3, Ali ibn Yaqtin. Number 4, one of the companions of the 7th Imam by the name of Ziyad ibn Abi Salama. He comes to visit the 7th Imam one day. He comes to visit him, and the Imam tells him that I heard you have been promoted to a governor. And this is in the government of Harun. You're a governor of I think, Ahwaz or somewhere else. So he tells him, yes. They summoned me and they told me, we want you to become a governor of one area. So look at what the Imam says. He says, Wallahi, if I were to be thrown from a cliff and my body would be torn into pieces, it would be better than to serve in a government of the zalama, of the oppressors, unless, you see there's an unless. The Imam says, unless you can use your post to help the Shia, to help the believers, to keep them safe, to make sure you could advance their interests and their agendas. If you can do that, then I'll tell you this is a very good act. You're doing a very recommended act. This is the 4th example. And finally, during the time of the 6th Imam, there was a man by the name of Abdullah al-Najashi. He sends a letter to our 6th Imam one day, and he tells him that I have been summoned to become the governor of Ahwaz. By whom? By al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi. Mansur al-Dawaniqi, he was the father or grandfather of Harun. He was also one of the khulafa of Bani al-Abbas. So they want me to become the Khalifa of Ahwaz. Present day, it's in Iran, South Iran. So he tells him, please tell me, is that okay or is it haram? Because I'm helping an oppressive government. I'm getting engaged in the politics of the oppressive government. The Imam tells him, he writes him a letter. He tells him, you know, this news of the fact that you have been made the governor of Ahwaz, it has saddened me and it has made me happy at the same time. Why? Because the Imam says that this position that you have been given is a double-edged sword. The Imam tells him, I'm happy Because inshallah, you'll be able to use your position to help the Shia, to help them in financial problems, when they need any problem, with the government, that you could protect the Shia. So thus, I'm happy that now we have a Shia in the government who can help us. But at the same time, I'm sad because there's always the prospect of you, becoming a zalim yourself, becoming an oppressor yourself. Because sometimes the Shia, they would enter the government and they would become one of the zalima themselves. They would become an oppressor. They wouldn't help the Shia at all. And they would oppress the Shia sometimes. So he tells them, be careful. The Imam writes him in the letter. If you can make sure that you won't become an oppressor yourself, then it's very good. Help the Shia. Make sure that you can help them and support them any way you can. But if you can't guarantee that, then leave your post. So the Imams, they gave us in all these stories and examples, they gave us the guideline, brothers and sisters. Are we allowed to engage in the political process of an oppressive government, yes or no? The answer is very simple. If you can use your position to help Muslims, to support Muslim causes, to support the believers and the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, then yes. It is not haram, and in fact, it's recommended. It's something that's very good. Unless, of course, unless you can't guarantee that. If you can't guarantee that, you may enter the government and be an oppressor yourself. This is where it becomes haram. This is where the verse where Allah says, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارِ applies. Where Allah says, do not mingle and mix with the support of with the oppressors, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish you. So when it comes to the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, the ahadith are clear, it's not haram. And that's why I said, there's no marja' that says it's haram. So brothers and sisters, we have to seek the opportunity. We have to take advantage every opportunity that we have and get engaged in this government. And there's many ways, but at least, brothers and sisters, at least the least thing we can do is voting. Every single one of us here should be a registered voter. Sometimes, some Muslims, they ask, why should we vote? We're a minority, we won't make a difference. Who cares? We're like a drop in the ocean. Why should we vote? This is incorrect, brothers and sisters. That's wrong. That's the wrong mentality. Because politicians, they want every single vote. Because some races, they're very close. Remember in 2000, Bush, he won by only 500. There's almost 500 of you here. I mean, if all of you were in Florida and voted, you guys could have tipped the election, theoretically. Sometimes I've read in some, House races and Senate races and governor races, it's a tie. It reaches a tie. Only one person could have tipped it, could have made such a big difference. Politicians know that. And that's why they seek every single vote, brothers and sisters, even if we're a minority. But as long as we vote, if you don't vote, he's not going to care for you. They look at the graphs. Oh, Dearborn Heights and Dearborn, nobody votes there. Who cares? We won't even go and rally there. Because he has nothing to, benefit from in these two areas. Because people don't register to vote here. You can't help him. If you can't help him, why would he support you? There's some Muslims that say, if a candidate rises and he supports Muslims, I'll go and vote. That's not how it works. Start voting. Once they see Muslims as a power, they vote. Then they'll come and support you. Then they'll try to please you to get your vote. Not for God. They won't try to please you for Allah. They'll try to please you just for your vote. So it's like that question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You have to start voting in order for them to support you. You can't sit and wait for them to support you and then only then you vote. So when you vote for that person, you tell him that, look, if you want me to vote, you have to please me. You have to side with Muslims. You have to make sure that you advance Muslim interests. So if we start voting, brothers and sisters, maybe politicians will care about us more a little. But when they see low voter turnouts, they're not going to care about us because we can't help them. And that's why you see Jews, they have such high voter turnouts. I read that the national average is 50%. With Jews, it's how high? 90%. Almost all Jews vote. So 6 million Jews are equal to probably 10 million non-Jews because all of them vote. It's not about, it's living in the U.S. and being a citizen. It's about registering to vote and voting. That's the only people politicians care for. So that's number one. Number two, some people, they ask this question. They ask, who do I vote for? Okay, say, now who should I vote for? I read the ballot. It's all evil, corrupt people. Who do I vote for? There is no good option. And I agree with you. There is no good option. There is no angel. There is no prophet running. There is no Imam running. I wish Imam Mahdi would run for president. He's not running. There is no good option, but there are bad and worse options, aren't there? The hadith of Imam Ali says, لَيْسَ الْعَاقِلْ مَنْ يَعْرِفُ الْخَيْرَ مِنَ الشَّرِّ وَلَكِنَّ الْعَاقِلْ مَنْ يَعْرِفُ خَيْرَ الشَّرَّيْنِ. He says, the true wise person isn't the one that can tell between good and bad. Everyone can tell. Show me an angel and next to him a devil. I know the angel's better. You don't have to be smart to know that. The true wise person, the Imam says, is the one that can differentiate between the lesser of the two evils. When you have two evils and there's one which is a little less evil than the other, you can side with the lesser of the two evils. This is a logical rule. Imagine, you go to the doctor, and this happened to one of my relatives in the Middle East. I think he had diabetes or something, and there was a problem with his foot. They told him, look, either you die or we cut your foot. Is there a good option here? Having your feet cut, it's not bad. Your foot cut. And dying is not good. But which one are you going to choose? The lesser of the two evils, which is, at least let me live without a foot. That's better than not living at all. This is a logical rule, and it's an Islamic rule. Anytime you have two evils, you choose the lesser of the two evils. So you go and you want to vote. You have obviously here two parties. Now some people, they vote for the third parties that never win. Now this is still better than not voting for the third party, because at least you're a registered voter, you're engaged. But it's kind of like you're wasting your vote, because we know the third parties, they never vote, they never win. So a true wise person would vote for one of the two mainstream parties, won't they? Is there an ideal option? No. That's why we have to be clever, and we have to see which one is the lesser of the two evils. Yes, maybe one of the parties, one of the representatives, one of the candidates, he's too liberal, but at least he's Muslim, or at least he's friendly towards Muslims. At least he won't try to kick me out of America because I'm Muslim. And maybe the other candidate is conservative, which is good, but he's a racist to the bone, from his head to his foot. He's a racist and he's anti-Muslim, and he wants to promote islamophobia. So weigh the two and see which is the lesser of the two evils and vote for that. Logically, that's what the logic dictates, and that's what Islam says, brothers and sisters. Because not voting is the worst option, because we're just going to be left behind, and we are marginalizing ourselves. So next time when there's an election, whether it's the one in November, whether it's the presidential election, make sure that we're all registered voters. We go and vote, and we try to choose the lesser of the two evils. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you see, when there was a problem in the Muslim nation, he didn't just be passive and say, inshallah, God will solve our problems. No, he wasn't passive, he was active. And that's why he started his revolution. And he gave everything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the month of Muharram. We have to learn from Imam Hussein to be active, not passive. To go and get engaged. In the same way that Imam Hussein embarked on his revolution, and he did not want to stay silent. In fact, it's narrated that Imam Hussein, when he arrived to Karbala, he spoke to his companions, and the companions of Al-Hur, the enemies, were there. He told them that I heard the Holy Prophet say, "Man ra'a zaliman mustahallan li huramillah nakithan li ahdillah mukhalifan li sunnati rasulillah wa lam yughayyir bi fi'lin aw qawl kana haqqan 'ala Allah an yudkhilahu madkhalah." The Imam said, if you see oppression and you don't do anything about it, you don't say anything about it, you don't try to do something about it, then Allah will put you with those oppressors. Allah will resurrect me with those oppressors. I see oppression in this country, I have to do something about it. I can't just say, La ilaha illallah, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. May Imam Mahdi appear and put an end to this. No! Imam Hussein alayhi salam was active. I have to learn from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein, I mentioned a few nights ago, he gathered his companions on the night of Ashura. And he told them, every single one of you is going to die tomorrow, so leave me. And they all stayed with Imam Hussein and showed their loyalty. I mentioned the story a few nights ago. After the Imam told his companions that you will all die, his nephew al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan came to him. He was a young boy, 13, 14 years old. He was an orphan. His father had died years before. He came to the Imam and he told him, my dear uncle, awa uqtalu ana ghadan ayda. He told him, my dear uncle, will I also be killed tomorrow? Put yourself in Imam Hussein's shoes. Can you tell him yes? The Imam knew even al-Qasim would be killed because no one was spared on the day of Ashura except Imam Zain al-Abidin because he was sick. Even the 6-month-old baby of the Imam was killed. So of course al-Qasim would be killed. But could the Imam tell him, yes, you're going to get killed? Imagine if your son, your little son, may God forbid, we never see this day, has a terminal illness and the doctor says he only has a few days. If your young son asks you, Father, am I going to die in a few days? Can you tell him yes? Which type of ruthless father would tell his son yes? So Imam Hussein couldn't tell him, yes, you're going to die. He asked him a question instead. He told him, وَكَيْفَ الْمَوْتُ عِنْدَكَ يَا بُنَيْ? How is it that you perceive death? Are you afraid of death? Imam wanted to test him. Look at the answer of al-Qasim. Allahu Akbar. The beautiful, legendary, inspiring answer of al-Qasim. He told him, الْمَوْتُ يَا عَمْدُونَكَ أَحْلَى مِنَ الْعَسَلِ. He says, my dear uncle, if I die for you, it's sweeter than honey. Allahu Akbar. Spend millions on your children, spoil them, pamper them. You can never, ever plant that much wisdom and knowledge in them unless you teach them to seek, to take al-Qasim as their role model. From their younghood. Teach them that your true hero isn't Superman and Batman and this guy and that singer and that actor. Your true hero is al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan. The man who looked at death and he said it's sweeter than honey. The young boy who said that. Imam Hussein hugged him and cried. It was the day of Ashura. All the companions, non-relatives were killed. Some of the relatives of Imam Hussein were killed. Al-Qasim came. He asked for permission to go and fight. Imam Hussein refused. He told him, you're only a young boy. I can't allow you to go and die. So then Al-Qasim, he was so angry. He was so infuriated. He was so disappointed that he can't go and fight. He wants to go and make his uncle proud and give his life, sacrifice it. So Al-Qasim, he went in a corner and he was crying and weeping until he remembered that his father had left him a letter. On that letter it said, Ya bunayya idha swaddat aw dhlammat ad-dunya alayk. If a great day of calamity comes by, it's the worst day of your life, open this letter. He remembers the letter, he opens it, he sees it's a letter from his father to Imam Hussein. He quickly takes it to Imam Hussein, he's happy. Imam Hussein sees it's a letter from Imam Hassan, his brother, telling him, my dear brother Hussein, on the day of Ashura, I will not be there to fight with you, but please accept my son Qasim as my personal sacrifice. When he asks you for permission, don't refuse. I know he's only a young boy, but he's my sacrifice for you on the day of Ashura. Please allow him to go. The Imam can't refuse anymore. He goes to Al-Qasim, he tells him, I have given you permission to go and fight, but I am embarrassed from your mother, because how can I allow you to go and fight for me and die while she's watching? Al-Qasim tells him, my dear uncle, don't worry about my mother. Inna ummi hiya albasatni lamata harbi. He tells him, my uncle, my mother is encouraging me to die for you. She's telling me, go and give your life for your uncle. She's giving me my sword and armor. Al-Qasim goes and farewells his mother, all the relatives, and then he comes and farewells his uncle Hussein. The Imam helps him mount the horse because he was too young to mount the horse by himself. He gave him the sword and the armor. Hamid ibn Muslim, one of the narrators, he says, all of a sudden I saw a shining young boy. He came out with strength and valor while he was crying out these words, this line of poetry. He was saying, إن تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن سبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن وسط أناس لاصقوا صوب المزن. The young Qasim, he went and he fought with so much courage. He killed many of the enemies until his sandal strapped. He bent down to fix his sandal. One of the enemies came and he hit him on his head with a metal rod. Al-Qasim fell to the floor. All the ashab, the companions, when they used to fall, they used to say these words, alayka minni salam ya Aba Abdullah, farewell my master Hussein, except Al-Qasim, because he was so young and innocent. He cried out, Amma adrakni, my dear uncle, rescue me, save me, come and help me. Imam Hussein alayhi salam rushed to the side of Al-Qasim. When the dust settled, he could be seen sitting next to Al-Qasim, and he was telling him, يعز على عمك أن تناديه فلا يجيبك أو يجيبك فلا يغني عنك. He told him, my dear dear nephew Qasim, forgive me that you called me, but I was not able to help you. I wish I could have came and saved you, but I was not there in time for you. خصمهم يوم القيامة جدك وأبوك. Their enemies will be your father Imam Hassan and your grandfather Rasulullah on the day of judgment. And then Imam Hussein took the body of Al-Qasim back to the tent. The enemies said, we saw Imam Hussein dragging the feet of Al-Qasim because he had no energy left. He did not have any energy because seeing a companion after companion, relative after relative dying in front of him, he did not have power to take Al-Qasim back to the tent. He took his body, he placed his body next to the body of Ali al-Akbar. The mother of Qasim, she came, Ramla. She saw her young boy, 13-year-old boy, he's covered with blood and he has been killed. She threw herself on the body of Al-Qasim. She dyed her hair with the blood of Al-Qasim. And then she said, my dear son Qasim, all I wanted was to see the day that you got married and had children. I wanted to see my grandchildren. May Allah curse them. They deprived me from seeing your beautiful days. Assalamu alayka ya Mawla ya Aba Abdullah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Brothers and sisters, before you leave, just 2 minutes of latmiyah. Inshallah, we can then move to salah. Everyone read with me. My son, O Qasim. My son, O Qasim. My son, O Qasim. My son. Everyone. My son, O Qasim. My son, O Qasim, my son, يوم ذكريني من تمر زفة شباب من العرس محروم حنتي دم المصاب شمعة شبابي من يطفها حنتي دمي والجفن دار التراب يوم ذكريني من تمر زفت شباب. My son O Qasim, my son O Qasim, my son O Qasim, my son, my son O Qasim. My son, O Qasim, my son. Mother, remember me when you see a newlywed deprived of a wedding. My sacred blood is my dye, candle of my youth. When they turn it off, my blood is my dye, the sand is my only shroud. Mother, remember me when you see a newlywed. My son, O Qasim, Qasim, my son, my son, O Qasim, my son, O Qasim, my son, O Qasim, my son. يوم المبارك أصبح الدين شهيد وافزع العمي من يظل بالطف وحيد رملة بمصابي خلي واسوها حنتي دمي والجفن دار التراب my son قاسم my son Qasim, my son, the great day is that which I am martyred for God, and help my uncle when he remains all alone. My mother Ramla, console her for my death. My blood is my dye, the sand is my only shroud. My son Qasim, my son Qasim, my son قاسم, my son. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم العز الأجل الأكرم يا الله 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 يا الله. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات، اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، واجعلنا من أنصاره وعوانه المستشهدين بين يديه. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلوات. Brothers and sisters, I just want to remind you that the 10th day of Muharram, Ashura, the Falla will be on Thursday, inshallah, and I will recite the Maqtal of Imam Hussein at 9 a.m. inshallah. Thursday at 9 a.m. here, I will recite the Maqtal in English. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.